looking at, I find there's a lot of misinformation or disinformation around how your immune system works. What do you do about a virus? A couple years ago, I was on a working group at the state of Oregon called AWARE, the Alliance Working for Antibiotic Resistance Education. And it was charged by, the pressure on primary care doctors by the consumer to prescribe antibiotics for any cold or sniffle, right? You're coming in with your kids or yourself and you want something and you want antibiotics. But, most of the visits to primary care physicians during cold and flu season are due to viruses. What I found interesting at the state level, they were just recommending people to go down to the health food store and get some advice from the $10 an hour employee who has no health background on what supplements to take for their immune system. So Dr. Nye, myself, and Dr. Paisley, we raised our hands and said, well, this is kind of goofy. We're in the state of Oregon. We have primary care docs, which are naturopathic docs, and we actually specialize in viruses and immune system health. And they said, well, if you can show us some research, we'll put it up on our website. So we put that, we wrote up a position paper on things you can do for your immune system that is research-based. There's plenty of literature out there, so we're not just making it up or saying this will work for you. We actually have some really good research around it. And so I've included some of those on what you can do on your lecture notes. So if you're following along at home, we'll get you the lecture notes as well. And I'll include, you can look at our website for that link to the state of Oregon for the research-based recommendations there. So another component of where I like to start is just the flu virus, right? We're going in there, everybody calls every sickness this time of year, I had the flu, I had a high fever, I had the flu. I had the stomach flu, I have the nasal flu. So I find there's a lot of just misinformation about what the flu is. I've included the most common symptoms. So flu versus cold is one discussion to have, just more academically, but also just educationally as to what is going on out there. So fevers are usually much higher with the flu, over 102, 103, 104. A lot of people treat the fever as an issue, right? You don't feel good, you feel crappy with a higher fever. But my encouragement to folks is if you can live with it, like 1 or 2 days of a high fever, that's how your immune system is getting rid of the bug. A lot of people first, they just go right to fever reduction. I got to get this fever down, I feel horrible. But that actually prolongs your illness because that's your immune system trying to get rid of the bug. Headaches can happen with that, extreme tiredness, dry cough versus a wet stuffiness. So if you have that, the runny stuffy nose, but a wet cough, it's almost guaranteed not to be the flu. It's just an upper respiratory tract infection. Again, I treat these things the same. It doesn't matter if it's a cold or a flu. And so we'll give you some specifics on immuno enhancement here. Sore throat, muscle aches, and then stomach symptoms like the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea can also occur, but those are more common in kids. So a lot of times I'll hear, patients will come in and say, oh, I had the stomach flu over the weekend. A little bit of a misnomer. That's more of a gastritis, more intestinal bug, not flu virus. So chills, fever, cough, runny nose, malaise, all of those other flu-like symptoms, those are the things that come in. Now, if you remember, was it last year we had the swine flu? 2 years ago we had the swine flu epidemic, right? Well, H1N1 is still around. That's in this year's flu vaccine. That was the swine flu. They kind of really wanted to get rid of that name just for all kinds of characteristics. But there was a lot of testing done, right, where they deemed that an epidemic. And it really made Dr. Nye and me really look at, well, how are these numbers being made up? What are these statistics that they're throwing out? Our public health department is presenting to us as what you can do for cold and flu season is get the flu vaccine, which I'm going to give you some information about that. I personally, I don't recommend it for people such as yourselves. Maybe if you were way immunocompromised, had some really other health issues going on, maybe. But even then, I would still be a little reticent to recommend the flu vaccine.
Just because it's better for us to develop it?
No, because it's not very effective, and the adjuvants, other components of what's in it, actually have some really serious consequences. So, and I'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk directly to this year's flu vaccine and what's in it and why I don't recommend doing it. I mean, it's heretical. Naturopathic doctor not going with the public health recommendations, but it's not. I don't find it very helpful, and you'll see statistically why I recommend that as well, and also research-based. I've got some good information about the effectiveness of the flu vaccine. But we were just testing a lot of people, and then they stopped testing for typing. But what we're showing is between 3 and 17% of office visits for the flu are truly for the flu. So, you get all of these people coming in with the flu. They think they have the flu. And actually, when you type it for the flu, it's only between 3 and 17% of them actually have the flu virus. They have other viruses, but not influenza. And influenza, you start linking that to the 1918 epidemic and, mass death across the world. I just don't see that happening again, just with our resources, the economics of the times. Our sanitation is much different. Again, I think we need to prepare for things like that, but I'm not a fear-based practitioner, so we'll give you some more information on that. So in general, the flu is worse than the common cold as far as severity of symptom picture. A lot of times I get asked, how long am I contagious for? And it's basically for the run of the flu. So of a virus, which is 7 to 10 days. Usually highly contagious 24 to 48 hours after contact with an individual with the flu. You can be highest viral shedding. It doesn't always play out like that, because you could get exposed 2 days ago and then develop symptoms today, but in the meantime, when your immune system was ramping up to give you those symptoms, you're then spreading the virus around. That's the inherent beauty of viruses. If you're going to call them lovely at all, that would be the lovely aspect of a virus, as far as a physician is concerned, or a virologist.
So if you continue to have a cough for like 5 weeks after your...
Right, not so much. No, that is just your symptoms your body trying to clear the rest of those symptoms if you had a buildup of mucus or congestion in the chest. So a lot of times, in the fall, we just saw a cold that it was 6 weeks to 2 months. People were having a cough after they got sick. They were not contagious that long. So it's really the first 4 to 5 days of illness is the shedding stage of the virus. Children, a little bit longer, can go up to 10 days, but the initial incubation of the virus is 24 to 48 hours. So one component, we always see this number, 36,000 deaths a year were prevented by getting the flu vaccine. And, really wanted to look at, well, where did that number come from? Because it really is a statistical model. The British Journal of Medicine, which is a really well-respected international journal, they concluded that the only possible rationale for our CDC's complete disregard for scientific fact, this is a quote, direct quote from them, even in the face of independent research to discredit its statistics, is a public relations effort between the CDC and the vaccine manufacturers' campaigns to increase flu vaccination. I mean, this is in a really well-respected medical journal. This is what they're saying. So one component of it is, they just take how many people died this year, and then percentage of flu for the year, and then they just run a mathematical equation. They're not testing people that died for flu virus. So we don't really know, is that truly the number of people dying from the flu? And then there's complications that are attributed to the flu, like pneumonia is a big killer. Well, was it really the flu that created the pneumonia? We don't know that either. So it's an indirect model. So I always get a little bit wary of those numbers getting thrown out like that of, 36,000 people die a year. Because you look at over the last few years, so here's the other quote, we found no evidence of reduction of influenza-related mortality in the last 15 years, despite the concomitant increase of flu vaccine coverage from about 10% to 60% immunized. So with a five-fold increase of immunization, there was no change in the death rate from flu. And, again, so kind of coming back to your question about, well, do you recommend like just getting the flu if you get the flu? No, I don't recommend getting the flu ever. But even people that are vaccinated are getting the flu. So there's another journal, the Eurosurveillance. Again, this did a ton of research around the swine flu just because people were really concerned, as I was as a physician and having a big population of patients. I want to know, well, what is going on, and being able to educate people wisely about, well, what are my recommendations, right? I take it seriously. Eurosurveillance, so out of Europe, they just said, even at that time, so this was at the height of the swine flu epidemic, they were even saying, and this was out of Purdue researchers, the researchers found at that point in time, any vaccinations that are given in the U.S. will likely have little effect on the number of infections. And they produce that, and every flu year is different, but right now, October is very low. I just was online this morning looking, okay, well, what's the activity in Oregon and across the nation? And it's sporadic at best right now. Usually flu in particular will peak in January and February. You're seeing people get sick in the office now. We're seeing, a possible couple cases of flu through our office in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So, one component and why I don't recommend the flu vaccine, so we'll talk about the flu vaccine now, is the Cochrane Institute, William Jeffries, the Cochrane Institute, very conservative think tank of researchers, did a retrospective study of epidemiologic research on mass populations getting the flu vaccine. And I love that. He bashes vitamins all the time, which is great. I like reading that too. But they showed at all of the big levels of population-based research on the flu vaccine that it made no difference as compared to placebo. You would think the way that the news portrays this and our public health department does, that it made tremendous changes, right? I'm even seeing, I didn't pull it in right now. There was a kind of a misinformation statistical ploy on, get your flu vaccine because this one has been proven very effective against the flu this year. Well, there's no way to prove that. They just develop it every other year. And for the most part, they do a very good job of picking, what flus are we going to be exposed to this year based on historical data. I think over the last 45 years, they've done exact matches 25 years, which is pretty impressive as far as studying and trying to link that up. This year's flu shot, the 2011 to 2012 shot, has 3 different strains. Every year they have 3 strains of virus in there. There's an H1N1 type A virus. There's another H3N2 like virus type A, and then there's a B type. So there's a B and an A type influenza virus. H1N1, that's the one that got the big press 2 years ago because it was new, relatively quote-unquote new. It had been around in the 70s as well. But again, not the best information coming out to us as consumers and for our own health care. But then you look at, well, what the adjuvants, what else do they put in there? In particular, there's squalene they use as a preservative. Squalene has been implicated in creating autoimmune conditions. They have really reduced the mercury. A lot of people in the pediatric realm have been concerned about mercury in kids and possible links to neurological disorders. So there is some education going on, even though the medical establishment denies any link between mercury and any neurological conditions. There's plenty of research to support that. I'm not saying the vaccines create that either, but I think I do see a lot of people, and I do see a lot of mercury issues, and I don't want mercury going into my body any more than I'm getting from the environment, and even that is too much.